This is The Strategist, episode 1870. My name is Zane Velji. With me, as always, Stephen Carter and Shannon Phillips. How are you guys?
Having a great time.
And Shannon? Girl.
Guys and Shannon, that's
guys
nice.
and lady. Whatever you prefer. Whatever she'd prefer. I'm giving her space, Carter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't care. I think
with guys.
We can wheel over guys. We can just pave that over. I think that's probably pretty gender neutral at this point. Anyway, hi guys, how are you?
Shannon, we're doing great. Doing great.
Former Alberta NDP cabinet minister, longtime MLA, brain trust of the NDP, I'd say all over the country, but specifically here in Alberta. And now, what are we up to, Shannon?
I am a consultant, and so that I know that sounds
Welcome.
awful, isn't
Welcome.
it?
She makes so much money, though.
Are we changing the name of the show to The Consultants?
The consultant.
I think we could, yeah.
Do we own The Consultants?
I'm in a small firm with a liberal and a conservative. Tyler Meredith and Kim Bosencool, and me. I'm the notional New Democrat of the group. You will find that I am a pretty poorly behaved federal New Democrat, as you may have even seen through the Calgary Confederation campaign. But I've been a New Democrat for a really long time. 25 years. And so now here I am. I'm on the other side of public life, which is a happy place to be. And wandering around the country, doing projects, giving advice. It's good.
Carter, Hogan is dead to us, and in part
he
it's
doesn't
because
exist.
of Shannon Phillips. You gave him such good advice during that campaign that he is now you've actually effectively kicked him off the show. Shannon.
Yeah.
That's
I
what's
didn't do
Shannon.
anything. I wish I could have done more. I really wanted to go canvassing.
You really wanted him off the show. Yeah.
No, I really wanted to go canvassing to see what was going on out there because I think it was a really interesting moment in Canadian politics. And I love hearing from the random voters, right? I want to know what's making them tick. And I know Carter doesn't want to hear from them.
He's barfing in his mouth.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're living in an interesting part of town and have an interesting perspective, and they elected an interesting guy. So I like that part of the job. I think it's worth doing. It's worth knowing how they tick and how to reach them.
Is it even worth having her on the show if she likes talking to the average voter?
No, it is not. No, the whole entire premise of the show
very
is that
much,
we sit
Shannon.
above.
Great having
we sit
you here.
above and away from.
Yeah, it was really lovely
We
having you on the
also
show.
apparently kick the shit out of the audience periodically. That maybe I'll try to do that.
You know what? We'll let you have your first go at that. We'll make that period right now.
Well, I don't really understand why anybody's listening to this show, so we start there. I have questions about people's judgment, especially on the paywall.
Why do we
version.
bring
My
on people
God.
that don't listen to the show, Carter? This seems
No,
like
she
a
actually
pattern.
does. She's a listener. She's
asking why. She's asking why.
Yeah,
and I think the reason
she knows
is
why.
Well,
I've never
because of
listened to
me.
the show,
I have
so I get it.
I have moments of self-reflection whenever I do listen to this show. Why am I
Here's what I
doing
want to
this?
do. I want to tap into Shannon, I want to tap into your unique Alberta-based insights. Carter, I want to spend the next 45 talking about separatism in this province, but not in the way that other podcasts are, which is the piecemeal of what's happening, what Danielle Smith has done, etc. Can the two of you and the three of us, by extension, can we work together over the next 45 and carve out maybe some of the key elements of what a successful opposition to this needs to look like? We've talked about this in piecemeal, and what's sparking this is that Thomas Lukaszuk, former Deputy Premier of Alberta, has now registered his question and has been doing the media waves this past week, suggesting that his version of the separatist question has been filed first with Elections Alberta, and therefore, perhaps, maybe, it might be the question, should it get approved, and his question is very much about Alberta should and forever remain part of Canada, and any separatist notion will be and forever rejected. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the element of it. And so that got me thinking, is that the right call, acutely, what Lukaszuk is doing? And then more specifically, what do we need to be doing? What does an ideal, not even as activists and people, let's structure what the actual opposition to this thing needs to look like. And I think, to me, it begins with a very simple question that I'd like to throw at the two of you, which is, do we need one unified, singular campaign, or do we need multiple campaigns across the board saying their own distinct thing about why separatism in this province is not a good idea? Shannon, can I give you the first sort of kick at this in terms of just the top line? What do you think when I throw that out to you?
I honestly think that there needs to be one campaign and it needs to be no. That's where my gut is taking me right now. I mean, I'm open to new information and I'm open to other perspectives. But when I see the Lukaszuk thing, I think, okay, like that is driving things into one place, which is no, never, and you're not going to like kind of get some of those persuadable people in the middle to go, well, maybe not ever, right? And that is the way people think. So I think we're better off with a no to Danielle Smith, no to separatism, and keep the campaign around no, rather than like no to whatever their question is, right? Instead of putting a separate, like a no to separation question on the ballot. I think there's a risk of
which is what he's done with this.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a risk of having too much going on, and there's a risk of splitting resources, right? Because you got to think that these Republican guys, like somebody is funding this shit. There's leaflets on the doorsteps in the by-elections. There's already a campaign going on out there on the ground for them. And it's not clear to me how much money is behind the Lukasik effort. It's not clear to me how much money might be around other efforts. It scares the shit out of me, actually, to have everybody running off madly in all directions, and you're going to kind of accomplish nothing because it's not going to coalesce around one thing.
That there's not going to be one. I'm glad you mentioned this on 2 points in particular. Number one, like your criticism of what Lukasik and team, and as being all noble in their ambition, have put out on the table is very similar to mine, which is it's a bit of a risk play. But Carter, can I get you on what Lukasik is doing first before I ask you to give me should there be a singular venture that props all of this up? What do you think about what he's trying to do? File first, get it to be a positive question, so unearth the positive sentiments of Alberta and remaining within Canada, and using that as a wedge and potentially, we don't know this just yet because it's untested, potentially roadblocking the separatists in terms of them getting their question on the referendum ballot.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting gambit. I'm not sure that, I think that both Premier Smith and Thomas Lukasik are playing a little bit with fire. Just by recognizing the legitimacy of this. My view would be take a longer view, try not to take the legitimacy and add to it. If you put forth a positive framed question, you're now the yes side. I'm not sure that that's necessarily where you want to be, to echo Shannon's point, but I think more to the point, like he's trying to make it so that his question is the only question that can be asked for 5 years.
Correct. Right? That's actually exactly what he suggested he's trying to do.
That's his, and I'm not sure that his question is the only question I want asked on this in the next 5 years. I kind of prefer the Alberta separatist question, and I kind of prefer making them be the ones to put it on the ballot. Thomas thinks, I don't know, maybe Thomas thinks his question will fail, but the problem with that is all of the people, like everybody can vote for this question to be on the ballot. And then vote against it, right? Like he's playing with a sense of fire. Like this question could be on the ballot because now people who don't want to separate may sign this petition, and people who do want to separate may sign this petition. And suddenly the path to 180,000 signatures, or whatever the number is that much easier because both sides are signing the petition. I don't want both sides signing the petition. I want to make it so that only one side signs the petition, and that side is the separate side. This puts a path in front of us that could see us actually having the referendum, as opposed to the easiest path. The easiest path is that this thing never gets to the referendum. It fails getting 180,000 signatures, because that is still, even though Danielle Smith has reduced the threshold dramatically from what it was, like I think it was closer to 600,000 signatures, and now it's 180,000 signatures. I'm using round numbers. This is infinitely easier, but it's still not easy. It's still not easy to get 180,000 people all to sign something and say, yes, I agree with that. It is easier to get 180,000 people to sign something saying, I want this question on the ballot. And that's what Thomas is playing with. Thomas is playing with fire in suggesting that this question, his positively phrased question, is now going to get on the ballot and win. I think that keeping them off the ballot is far easier than winning the actual referendum.
It also potentially even gives Smith an out in some ways as being the engineer of this conversation, the singular engineer of this conversation. It phrased that a bit and says, at some point, we're going to take the mantle, put a separatist question, even if it's in the positive frame, and say citizens have now, it kind of lets her off the hook from a pure Smith driving the agenda. Shannon, jump in here. React to what Carter's saying, because I think you laid it down, and I think you guys might be quite aligned on this from what I hear.
I think we are aligned, and the reason is where you are, driving public attention, because this is all about the attention economy, right? Danielle Smith is grabbing the nation's attention in the wake of Carney winning. And driving it to where she wants it to go, which is Alberta's getting a raw deal, politics of endless grievance, re-elect me because I'm the only one who can stand up to Carney, yada, 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 right? That's what she's driving towards. But she's also driving towards keeping her own people together. We make that a lot easier if we're running madly off in all directions with, a couple of different separation questions, some of which become sort of unclear. What am I voting for? Am I voting yes on this one, no on that one? There's a reason why this became quite an issue 30 odd years ago. We even had a federal clarity act and a fucking Supreme Court decision over the issue, because this stuff gets really complicated fast.
Yeah.
And people, dick around with the question framing in order to kind of yank voters' chain. They do this, right? And so I don't know the value in sort of adding to that, participating in it. I would rather just make this Danielle Smith's fault in the first place, that we're having this silly, distracting conversation, and pin it all on her. The instability, the uncertainty, or will they or won't they? She's and basically for a broad swath of Albertans, then beyond just the sort of progressive left or whatever, to be able to say no, this is a bad idea for the future of the province. It allows other forces to be able to build a much larger coalition than otherwise might be possible, and driving ourselves into littler corners is the last thing that anybody who is basically not UCP, which is what I would call everyone else, right, who doesn't share Danielle Smith's views, that's the last thing we need. We do not need to be siloing ourselves off, and this runs the risk of doing that. Like I said, I could be convinced, but at first blush, I'm not loving it.
So, Shannon, welcome to the show. I'll get back to the first question in 25 minutes because I haven't gone back there just yet. Carter, this is actually interesting to me because both of you have teased at this, but it goes back to what Hogan would talk to us about on the show often, about this era of negative partisanship. And if the Lukaszuk question, let's just pretend there's a world in which the separatist question, Elections Alberta denies because Lukaszuk got his paperwork in first. Let's just say the story he's telling right now is the right one, that there's only one question on this. If that ends up happening, you're actually trying to mobilize a bunch of people to say yes to the status quo, which versus trying to get a bunch of people to say no to an imminent threat. It sounds like semantics. It's not, is it?
No, it's totally different. It's totally different motivations. I mean, people find you will find yourself in a place where you can't motivate yourself to get out of bed to go and vote for a yes on the status quo, but you absolutely can get out of bed and go and vote no on a threat. And
on a threat, on a
those
clouds,
two actions
coming down on you, sort of thing. Yeah.
Those two actions are totally different. One of the reasons, we use hope and we use fear in elections, right? We use hope and we use fear. But status quo is neither. Status quo is neither hope nor fear. Status quo is existence, right? So Thomas is picking a question that is neither status quo, because it's status quo, it is neither hope nor fear.
Now he would, can I interrupt you there? He would argue that what they're trying to do, and he's not made this argument, but I'm going to try to make it on his behalf, is that with the brand of their organization and they're trying to say we're always going to be Canadian, forever Canadian. The hope of Canada is encapsulated in their affirming question. Enough?
No, not enough. I mean, I think that there's other ways of tackling it, and maybe we'll get to them in a little bit. But I think that we shouldn't be playing on the same field as the separatists.
Yeah.
We should be organizing on a different field. And that doesn't mean, I'm not suggesting that Thomas's instinct to organize is wrong. Thomas's instinct to organize is correct. How he's choosing to organize is incorrect in my mind, because he's accepting the premise of the problem. let's not accept the premise of the problem. Let's choose a different problem. There are many, many problems that we can choose to tackle in this province. Danielle has given us so many. Why would we choose to be on the same path and the same plane as the separatists? That's what bothers me about Thomas's move.
Okay, well, another way to put this
go ahead,
is people don't vote to say thank you; they vote to say fuck you. So the job of a political campaign is to point them in which direction they're trying to say you want them to say fuck you to, and that's going to be the job of the no campaign. Right. Rather than, saying, oh, thank you, the red and white flag. Yay. That is,
I still want to keep it. Yeah. I'm re-upping. It's like rather than having auto renewal, I'm going out to like explicitly check the box to auto renew on what's been going on. How many people do that? Like we could see that from a basic psychology point of view, that like from even just as a digital marketer and a marketer, like that is really tough for people to do. Right.
There's another
need that
example
box
here.
Pre-checked. For people, exactly.
I mean, look at the CPP conversation, right? Which is part and parcel of the separatism nonsense. And it's funny that they won't put the CPP conversation on the ballot explicitly. They'll put this amorphous blob of separatism on the ballot, right? But they already took this for a test drive with the CPP conversation. And what did they find? They threw $9 or $10 million at a campaign, and they found that people did not want something taken away from them. People were saying no. Right. But try to pry those people out of their houses with a crowbar to get them to go and mark a ballot for yes to the CPP. I like my payroll deductions. That's not going to happen. But they will, write to their MLAs, write to their whatever, and participate in some way to say, no, you're not going to take something away from me. Right. And that's another sort of riff on the negative partisanship thing.
Yeah.
But it is, again, tapping into how people feel about they want to reject a change that they don't like. They don't want to underline something that they already have.
Carter, I'm so glad that Shannon pushed Corey off the pod. This is so much more insightful and so many fewer words.
So many fewer
Imagine
words.
the amount of words.
Yeah.
He's great. Do you think he's going to say the most words in Parliament this year?
I think he could.
I think he is.
He's on the government side.
Don't think that's gonna stop him.
You don't think that's gonna slow him down?
Don't think that's gonna slow him down at all. I need to get a clarification from you, Carter, because I got Shannon's answer on this. Singular no campaign, and an extension question to you, Carter. Is that no campaign also the same campaign that organizes on a separate question? So just to be clear, your argument is that we need another question that can then mobilize people to get out and then defeat the referendum, but also has its own question. Is your version of a no campaign A, singular? And B, is it the same organizing nucleus as the other question in your mind?
I think so. I think that what we're trying, it's a negative.
I for sure thought you were going to go with no.
No, because it needs to be one. Shannon's point about it being only one group of people who ultimately carry the no thing forward. Like, for example, there is almost a 0% chance that two referendum questions are going to get approved in the same cycle. Let the separatists try and do theirs, and then the no side tries to do our question. Let's call it our question for now. Our question is going to be something unrelated to the
separatism, but it's maybe about the air that we're breathing, metaphorically.
Pollution.
About what's happening currently in Alberta. Something related to that. Right.
Whatever we choose to do, and then but the odds of both of them succeeding and both of them winding up on the ballot are infinitesimal. I mean, how I keep coming back to how hard this is. Yeah. I suspect that we would fail in getting enough signatures to actually get our question on the ballot, but we would succeed in generating thousands of names, tens of thousands of names, over 100,000 names, I bet. Plus, we would have thousands of organizers.
And then you're saying they become the default no campaign.
Exactly. Because then they become the no campaign. And now you're 3,000 organizers to the good, and you've identified 100,000 signatures. And if you're not even worried that much about getting the signatures, you do some of the things that were done as tactically in the Jyoti Gondek campaign. Because as you know, the signatures all have to be wet ink. They have to be written. But it doesn't stop us from gathering online signatures, because we don't actually care if we're successful. What we care about is having the question. What we care about is finding the names of the people who are opposed to Danielle Smith and Danielle Smith's government.
So
that's way more interesting to us.
Shannon, I'm impressed by Carter's sort of like, 3-step process. My skepticism is the following, and I'll get you to comment on what he's throwing on the table too, but my skepticism is the following. Is that too many dominoes to fall rather than just mounting a very solid no campaign? That's
it's
where my
a bit of
skepticism
3D
is.
chess.
Yeah.
Right? It is.
It's 2D chess at the most.
Well,
at the most.
That's true.
It's-
I would
considering
agree.
the source.
Considering the source, this is true. Considering the source.
It could go into that where I can see where he's going with it, right? Because anytime you are going out there in a moment of heightened political activity of any kind and going out there and then driving towards ground war, like I am here for that, right? And I think that is not wasted effort at all. And so my only concern is we haven't really talked about what that no campaign looks like. So I just want to pivot to that for a moment.
Yeah, please.
Because that's the piece that's like, I don't know, a little bit existential for the country. And is the kind of stuff that makes me nervous, right? About, how close Danielle is really flying to the sun here. That particular effort needs to be, we need to think about who is sort of leading that, how it is raising money, how broad it is. And that's going to be the much more difficult piece of work because near as I can tell right now, you've got Shannon Phillips and Jason Kenney in the same tent. That's a fairly broad coalition. I don't know how you go around trying to, to fund that, to organize it, to make it as, do you make it broad across the country, right? Do you involve outside voices from other provinces? Do you keep it straight to Alberta, right? Are you wheeling out, I don't know, like the cowboys and the ranchers and the oil men plus the enviros? Like, how broad are you making this thing? And more to the point, most importantly, how are you funding it to make sure it's effective? Right. That to me,
I hear you,
is the one that is the piece that makes me more nervous. I feel like it's almost like, there's that piece that feels more complicated. There's the thing that Carter's talking about, take another question, another public interest topic of which there are many, and use it to organize. That's fantastic because we're probably going into an early election. Like, I'm here for it. It leaves aside the more thorny and like ball of hair question on the no.
So then you have to, open the doors. Yeah. Let me just do this. Let me just do this.
Lay it on me. Yeah.
You have to open the doors to all of those other people who weren't a part of your system in generating the first 2,000 organizers are going to be the organizers that came in to help you sign up the for your question. The next 2,000 organizers are going to be some people who might be mortally opposed to your question that you originally asked, but you got to open the doors. You got to throw open the doors and make it a singular no effort, because the singular no effort is far more important than any of the questions that you're going to get on them. If they're successful in getting this question on the ballot, which I maintain they are more likely to be successful with Thomas's question than they are to be successful with their own question.
Interesting. But I will say, Carter, Shannon's list of questions is pretty much exactly the same nervousness I have. Use the word nervousness, that's exactly it. Like, between the three of us, we have, I'd say, pretty legitimate Alberta organizing experience. And I don't even know where to start, Carter, because I'm stuck at the who. Like, who organizes? And this is kind of why I want to discuss this episode. Like, what does this need to look like? Who organizes it? Spokesperson, money. How do you make room for the Alberta NDP, who will probably want to take the mantle on their own and become the default no on this question?
Yeah.
Perils of that, opportunity of that. How do you create the tent, as Shannon has talked about, as wide as the person who's created the circumstances to allow us to get here, Jason Kenney, and someone like Shannon Phillips? This is, I'm really struggling with some of the basics here. So, like, do you have a sense, Carter, of your who and what? Like, or are you as like stuck in the mud? I wouldn't want to speak for Shannon, at least as I am, in terms of what the first move here and how we do something like this. And Shannon's question of, I think, a really good one. Do we involve voices outside of this province? Is that a detriment or not, so to speak? And then let me just layer on one more piece. All of the corporate interests that are interested in investor certainty, to keep Alberta within Canada, not because they fucking love Alberta, but because they want their dollar to go further and want to have a frothy base to invest in as well. And just one element of it. So where's your head at? Because these are the list of questions I wanted to go through with, let's just say, 25 minutes left, Carter.
I'm exceptionally worried about creating a Jim Dinning leadership style.
What does that mean?
The Jim Dinning leadership style was he had every strategist, every big hitter in the party all lined up to work with him. They all worked with him, but none of the decisions got made. No actual action took place because everybody just kind of sat around and said, well, we're the leaders. We're going to be in charge, right? We have, and I think that's where the risk lies when you've got Monty Solberg, Jason Kenney, Shannon Phillips, Stephen Carter, Thomas Lukazik, Zane Velji even. Some people, you're welcome. All of you could pull together, and that's Michelle Rumpel-Garden.
Do you know what this is reminding me of? Can I just interrupt you for a second? This is giving me PTSD of a meeting that you and I hosted, but you mainly. Do you remember this meeting, Carter? Where we were self-congratulating about how many people we got from both sides of the spectrum to sit together to advocate for the Olympics.
It was the exact same scenario.
Oh my God, it's giving me PTSD.
Because we can get all of the leaders in the room, but we're not going to get them it's not actually about getting the leaders in the room. It's about getting the 2,000 people in the room. And that's where I think you have to create something to do, right? That's what we did with the Corey Hogan campaign. We created something for them to do. They were able to achieve something and they could achieve it in relative short order. If we start organizing organizers, around a second question that is an opposition of the Smith government. I think that the opposition to the Smith government gives us the coverage. Now, I don't think it should be an NDP initiative. I don't think it should be a Corey Hogan-led Liberal initiative.
Yeah,
I think
you should
it has
just
to
take
come
the
from
Confederation slogan and start a new campaign.
Exactly. Alberta's worth fighting for. Away we go.
Canada. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I mean, come on. It's just not. It's not what we're looking for. What we
so
need.
Then who's the who? Who's the who? Like, this is what I'm stuck. Who is the who?
Whoever wants to be the who.
There's
the
two
people
things
listening
here.
to this podcast.
I'm
could be
really
the who.
struggling with that, Carter. Shannon.
You're killing me.
Well, I think there's two things here. There's the air war and the no campaign, and how do you just have some degree of coordination, right, between wheeling out, high-profile old-ass Tories, right, and more progressive voices and other people who are maybe from more like the cultural or sports world or these kinds of people,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
So that's an air piece that doesn't require a lot of resources. I mean, you can put money behind it, but I think you probably have to. But it's just simply, an air cover for, a broad range of voices who are saying, no, this is fucking stupid, right? Separatism is a bad idea. And the business community can do what they want in there, but there's kind of two problems. Number one, what Carter identifies, which is the curse of the tall foreheads, right? They're all sitting around, I'm smart, I'm smart. I ran a campaign 20 years ago.
Welcome to this podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome, Shannon, to this podcast.
And that's going to lead you nowhere fast. So it's nice that they can have meetings in living rooms, but they need to go out and do something, to Carter's point.
Yeah.
But they do need to, there does need to be a level of coordination on people busting out with their various no arguments and products, pushing into the public consciousness. That's the first thing. But the other piece that is important here is that those people are not everything, right? Mm-hmm. You can't paint yourself into that corner. You can't, and you have to have some organizing on the ground. What that looks like and how that is funded, even on the no campaign, you have to. You have to. That's the piece that I'm not sure how to find. It's easy to coordinate error between disparate voices. But if you're waiting, how do you coordinate ground? And that'll be the piece that is tougher ideologically, across this sort of, as yet notional, broad coalition of people. As for the NDP, I mean, they should definitely go out there and gin up their members and figure out how to re-up their sign locations and all of those kinds of things and, get people interested and excited. But should they be leading it? No, because then automatically you end up in the Hogan-esque construct of negative
50-50
partisanship,
partisan
right?
jump ball frame. And so my concern about this from a money perspective, and I'm going to stick with Shannon for a second, Carter, is that amongst if status quo remains the same with all conditions, organizers, the challenges that you guys have both very astutely laid on the table, the NDP is the group with the names, the numbers, the money, and they kind of end up doing it. If everyone else is looking at someone else to lead it, and we're creating this massive big tent where we're looking for the first 2,000, and we're almost running a no campaign primary, like we're very good at this, right? Bunch of no campaigns or versions of a no campaign will sprout up, and then they're going to compete with one another, which is something I want to talk about, Carter. How do you win the no campaign primary? Then the NDP just becomes the party and the institution. I shouldn't say the party, the institution that exists, that has time, money, resource, capacity to fight this thing. Maybe not in the most strategic way because they're a political party on the other side of a question, but just by default. How much of a concern is that to you, Shannon?
It's kind of a concern because what it does is it kind of closes off some of the persuadable voters in the, kind of in the middle, who are like, I don't know, I need more information, right? About like what would this allow us to do? A yes vote in terms of leverage, or what we might get out of the federal government. All these questions you hear from the public when you look at polling on the separatism question, right? A lot of Albertans are like, oh, well, we could threaten, and then maybe we would not have to pay equalization anymore, which, of course, none of that is real. But that is the risk there. And it also, it does take the New Democrat, certainly they have the infrastructure, but it does also take them off of, separatism still isn't a lived experience. This is another one of the things that I bang on all the time.
It's not as good as a healthcare question for them, I would argue.
Healthcare scandal's not a lived experience. Yeah. Sitting in a fucking waiting room is a lived experience. The economy is a lived experience. Paying your bills is a lived experience. Being on a wait list for a knee surgery is a lived experience. Not being able to get your kid in for their asthma meds re-up, lived experience, right? Closed ERs across the rural Alberta. Those are the kinds of real things that then the New Democrats are not talking about, because you're not allowed to talk about everything when you're a political party, especially not now, right? If that was ever the case, it ain't the case in 2025. So there is a bit of a zero-sum thing happening here, and people are going to talk about the separatism thing anyway, right? There might be ways for them to hold hands in the dark, reach their members, get them, signing various ballot initiatives, that kind of stuff, talking to their individual identified supporters, members, sign locations. But I just think there's dragons there for them to be. I mean, obviously they need to be opposed, but for them to be leading an initiative, right? Because there's going to be so many people out there who wouldn't necessarily hitch their wagon to it, especially the rural voices that you kind of need for this thing. If it's, got an orange patina on it.
Carter, is the role for the NDP just to drift? Just to honestly see where this is going, be right on message and frequency, but not lead the message? Because I share Shannon's concerns that, and I've articulated this in the past, that if the NDP take up the mantle here by default, this becomes like any other 50-50 partisan issue, 60-40 partisan issue, and people just view it through that frame, being like, oh, the messenger here is the NDP. Obviously, I'm not going to trust it, sort of thing. How do you kind of give them a sense of their role and purpose in all of this?
I love Shannon's phrasing of holding hands in the dark. I thought that was exactly right. I mean, they can be aligned on this. Their volunteers can be involved in this. They should be involved in this. Their infrastructure and leadership should be focused on their primary objective, which is to build the party and get ready for the next election. I've never understood why they don't hold hands with the municipal campaigns that are running, because and make it so that they can't be seen, but they get a lot of benefit from it. They didn't do that in 2021 with the Gondek campaign, and I think it cost them later during the provincial election. I think that this is an ideal opportunity to kind of hold hands in the dark, to steal Shannon's phrasing, and to make sure that they're still around. However, they can't be leading it. And if you're inviting all the people to the table, then all the people get invited to the table. I just think that the easiest way to do this, and I come back to my earlier point, getting all the tall foreheads into a single room and starting to build this thing isn't going to work. You have to build this thing and then invite the tall foreheads to the organizational structure.
So
I think that's the whole
let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. How do we build that thing, and how do you make sure your version of it is the thing, right? Like, because I think this concept of whether it's the opposition, like a new question Carter puts up, or an actual no campaign, TBD, right? Like, you're starting to sell me, at least personally, a bit more on your idea, Carter. That being said, let's just call it the no, right? Let's just call it the no side for the simplicity. Let's just say
For
that,
simplicity,
right? Like, let's just say all things equal, the separatists get their question on the table. They're the affirmative. This is the no. How do you win the no campaign primary? Which means that we're good at some things as progressives, which is starting 50 versions of the same thing. 10 people thinking that they should be the leader of that thing. Another 5 people thinking they can't work with the other 5 people who are doing the other thing. How do you ensure if we're looking for one fucking campaign, how do you ensure you win the no primary, Carter? How would you suggest this? You became the de facto yes campaign for the Olympics. So maybe you want to talk about that experience. Maybe you want to talk about other things. How do you become the de facto campaign here?
That was brutal experience to become the de facto yes campaign.
I was part for some of it.
In part because we were trying to bring in all the tall foreheads, and all the tall foreheads told me especially to go get stuffed. Like that was a brutal campaign to try and bring everybody in. And part of the reason was we didn't organize enough at the grassroots level so that all the tall foreheads had no choice but to join us. And I think that
you were all reliant on their money and their connections and their all that sort of stuff.
We were overly reliant on their money, and they could hold it above us and say, "Dance, monkey, dance," and we would try and dance for the money when we should have been trying to organize at the grassroots level, and then have that grassroots level motivate the money. And it did at the end. Right at the end, things started to flow, and people started to put money in, and the yes campaign.
It became inevitable that you were going to be that campaign,
right? And
but you were fighting that primary halfway through as the general election. Let me just use these terms was going on.
Yeah.
You were still trying to compete for the airspace, weren't you?
Absolutely,
This is also my fucking concern here. But that we're going to have a bunch of us organizations competing to take the mantle when we all realize it needs to be a singular no, and the other side is just going to be talking about one simple thing over and over again.
But this is why I'm organized. This is why I want to organize a different question, because I think that the objective, you can create the no team so much easier without having to go back and fight for it. And because the tall foreheads, you know what? They're not all going to get in a room. They're not all going to agree. What you need to do is you need to build the structure, build the system, and then invite them in, because you can't have them sitting on the sidelines, just outside your tent, pissing in the tent. You have to be able to bring them in and make them feel like they're a part of it. And at the time when you actually need them, when the no campaign is starting up, because the timeline on this that I see is 3 months to organize organizers, 3 months to collect signatures. 2026 is the actual campaign. So when you get to the actual campaign, you're going to have all the tall foreheads being invited in January and February, and that's when you're going to need to do your primary fundraising. And by primary fundraising, I'm talking about a $3 to $5 million campaign on the no side.
Yeah.
You don't
You're probably
need,
right. You're probably right.
Well, and so you need those people in January. So how do you get them in January? We can try and organize them now, but I think it fails. I think that the only thing that makes you ready for that is that I've got an army of 3,000 people who are willing to go to war. Where's your army? You don't have an army? Okay, get behind my fucking army. That's how I'm
become
envisioning
inevitable just by growth. Shannon, any reflections on what Carter's thrown out on the table?
I don't mind that strategy at all, and in the absence of a different one, I'm willing to follow it.
This is called the Carter submission tactic, which he uses on most campaigns that he's on. He's like, come up with a better one. But isn't that your way, Carter? Like, not to interrupt you, Shannon. I think there's something interesting about what Carter said here, which is, like, you are also, like Shannon mentioned earlier on this episode, you're also open to having your mind changed if someone comes up with a better idea than what you've put out there, aren't you, Carter?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about it too, right? Like I got to start something, and then obviously you're going to iterate as you go along but you have to start with some kind of architecture, right? And like you need your 3 periods of action, right? And Carter's identified them. He's beginning, his middle, and his end. Every campaign has that. And as long as you've got some view of that, like having one strategy is better than having 10. And so good. I do think there's a missing piece here, though, and that's the air cover. And there does need to be some coordination of air cover through the organizing period. Otherwise, it gets left to the lunatics, right? So that it needs to be filled in.
Explain that a bit more. What do you mean?
Okay. Well, I mean, like the voices need to be moving out, right? And I always, I'm a bad politician, and then I like to go back and fight the last war. But when you look at what happened with the CPP, right?
Yeah.
You had this endless stream of like, sometimes it was the fucking Economist Party, right? And it was like, oh, but the liability or whatever, right? And that appealed to a certain audience. Sometimes it was the New Democrats. Sometimes it was, retirees and town halls and some of that bubbling up from the grassroots and, people coming to town halls to come, share their aches and pains, but also their quite highly sophisticated views as voters on their retirement security, because people care about that, as it turns out. But there was a drumbeat of air cover, right, around that topic, and that also helped make the government back down. Right, the government did a big splashy thing on, we're going to spend all this money advertising a possible Alberta pension plan that became the lightning rod, and then there was a constant stream of voices. That's the piece that does need to be somewhat coordinated, given the stakes of this thing. It also will mean that if people try to do something stupid, by people, I mean Ottawa, that, or other voices, like Big Ontario comes wandering in, right, to the chat, probably not helpful in talking to Albertans, right? Like that is a risk, that you end up with it becoming, and that, gins up Albertans, like, fuck off, I don't want to hear from you, Central Canada, right? Even if I'm persuadable one way or the other, I'm not interested in being hectored by someone outside of this province. So you do need those, the identification of those trusted Alberta voices across, and not just political. That's the other risk with us strategy types, is we think of, because it's a political question, has to be delivered by political people. It does not, and ideally it isn't. It's messages delivered by a broad range of voices that are then more trusted. That's really, really important. And so I would say yes to what Carter has laid out, and there needs to be some, and who is doing that, to your original hesitation, Zane? I don't know who is coordinating that, but there does need to be at least some locus of activity going, phoning people up and saying, I need you to do X or Y, and I need you to step out on this.
Carter, this is such a good point around what the message in the air cover is, and I maybe want to end here, but I still want to push you a bit more. Who? Carter, who? Who is this? Is it ultimately you? Like, is it someone like you? Is it a politician type? Like, do we need, and the reason I ask is, like, I'm trying to imagine this campaign. Does it need a figurehead? Maybe that's another way of answering this. Does it need a candidate of some kind? Does it need a person? Does it need a group of at least 2 to 3 people? Yeah, not the whole tall 4 heads in a room, but like, I want to drill down a bit on the who, because Shannon's thing about the message is also really important. But we've talked about the messenger and the messengers plural, even if it's 1 to 3 of them, also being as important. What do you think?
Well, I think that the messengers are super important. I mean, we chose on the Yes campaign for the Olympics, we chose messengers that were kind of outside of me, right? We chose messengers that were, kind of every man, if you will, or every woman. And I think we still need the every man or every woman's type of messengers. But I think that one of the things that we were missing was that tall forehead that everybody could go, and rally behind. And they could see that there was a strategy and see that there was a plan. I'm not sure who it's going to be, Zane. I mean, I think that you do need one tall forehead, and you need some grassroots. And I think that, to Shannon's point, then you also need the Ken Bosencools and the Monty Solbergs and the Jason Kennys and
the conservatives of that stripe.
Plus everybody else on the left, to stand up and take on spokesperson roles and take your calls. I can see this being one of those things where you're having a daily huddle with true organization people who are organizing,
Yep.
and a weekly messaging meeting with people who are going to go out and do media, or who will write op-eds, or who will write, the various pieces of this. So, I can see that's how you start to bring in the tall foreheads, is you get them into the messaging structure relatively early.
Or communicate on
let's
TikTok and Reels because,
Yeah.
it's 2025.
Okay, well, that hurt my feelings a little bit right there.
Hey, Carter, I have a question. I'm going to jump into our over-under, which is just one question that's been nagging at me in a moment here. But I do want to get your take on messaging. So, and both of you on this, actually, if we can go a few more minutes. What's really been bothering me is going back to the Brexit example. And Lukasik said this today, too. The reasons, or when he was doing his media rounds, and not to go after him, I think it's noble what he's trying to do, but I think it points to the potential pitfalls, which is he was listing 20 cogent reasons why we shouldn't separate, and then said the list goes on and on. And the no side, the leave side of Brexit had a fucking bus that said you get $500 million back for healthcare. That was it. There was other xenophobic shit underneath there, but that was it. My concern is our proclivities are to give everyone a laundry list of the list goes on and on. Literally, we run the list goes on and on campaign. And we have different factions, and I think inevitably what ends up happening, we've got different factions talking about different things, and we all think it's working together, right? We all think they're actually connective and compounding, when in fact they're dividing. They're actually, they divide attention, they don't compound attention. They don't actually add, so to speak, into the tally count of the no campaign. How big of a concern is that for you, and how do we fight back against it when if the separatists are smart, they will go with the singular, even non-separatist benefit that one gets and use that as the basis of their campaign?
Well, I mean, Shannon's already basically alluded to what it's going to be. It's going to be, we get to keep our money.
Yeah, right. The money, the equalization, the pay, whatever that is. Right.
Which is fucking hilarious.
But also persuasive. It is
persuasive because
it's a lie, but it's persuasive. Yeah.
We've been fed the same lie since fucking Klein, right?
Yeah. Well, so it's well embedded. And it's one that even the modern conservative voter believes that Alberta's getting fucked. Like, you're getting fucked, but you get to keep more of it is persuasive. So I agree. Shannon's put it out there. They're going to do a version of that. We can't do the list goes on campaign.
No, we have to make sure that we figure out. I mean, but I also want to do polling and actually know what the fucking answer is. I don't want to just wing it off on a podcast and say, but
that's what this podcast is for, Carter. That's what there's just instinct.
But I think we get some time.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be done tomorrow. I think that by January you need to have a super strong sense of what that one thing is that keeps us in Canada, and that one thing may be that I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of it.
No, you don't. But I also think what we should be humbled with what the answer could be, because I think between us we might actually be like, it's some high-minded, politically entrenched narrative, and it might be a selfish motivation that we need to be campaigning on, just like the other side will. Shannon, I'll let you jump in. Sorry.
Well, the things that you want to go out and poll on, and Carter's absolutely correct that you shouldn't be doing this, with like gut and feel. You should actually have some data behind it. Go out and try to poke around in both qualitative and quantitative on what is going to be taken away from you if you vote yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's the formulation, right? If the other guys are out there saying you're going to get this fantasy fucking ride a unicorn to work thing, then we need to have the here is what is going to come out of your pocketbook, or what it's going to cost you, or what is going to be taken away from you. And that, again, to the negative partisanship thing, that is what will work. If you're saying no, because something's going to get taken away from me, that's, two negative statements, and that's how it needs to be framed. You have a bit of time, not a whole lot of time, but it needs to be very clear, I'm not going to use the word kitchen table because that's really fucking annoying framing. But it does need to be something that people can live, that they can feel, that they can the reason they chose NHS in the UK is because, after like whatever it was, a decade or more of Tory rule, the health system was in a fucking shambles.
Totally.
And so, there might be something there. Or it might be an economic argument. My gut is it's an economic argument, especially if WTI continues to soften through the fall, and the global economy softens. Not to get too policy heavy here.
I think this is really important, though.
That we're going to need to see around that corner, and that is both going to upset people and make them more worried about the federal government and make them feel more insecure, but there might be some way for opportunity there for the no campaign.
No, I think this is, I love that answer, because I think to my point of like being humbled, the no side doesn't have, with 50 reasons why not to separate, we have 0 right now, which is why neither of you, rightfully so, are willing to be like, here's our issue, or we've got, or saying we've got 50 of them. Like, in fact, if you've got 50, you got 0. And that's where we kind of find ourselves right now, which is like, they may have their issue. They already seem to be able to, and I don't know if they're doing a great job of crystallizing and messaging it, but they already have the seeds of it. I'm not sure we have the seeds of the defense. As much as optionality is there, that's actually a crippling problem in some way.
I don't know, Zane. I mean, if you look at the Liberal vote in the last federal campaign, you do see it increased even in rural areas across Canada, but even in Alberta. I mean, some of that was just mowing the NDP's lawn, right? But there, and that was a wrap yourself in the flag vote transfer. And, if you're voting Liberal in like Lethbridge County, like you are making a choice. That's a real choice you just made. And people did, right? So there's something there in the wrapping yourself in the flag. But it's not clear to me if that moment is going to move on, right? It might come back up a little bit if Trump comes here in Kananaskis and, lights himself on fire and everybody, freaks out again. That's a moment. We'll see how that persists. But there was a kernel of that, even in rural Alberta, rural Saskatchewan, rural Ontario. It happened.
I love this. We're going to leave that segment there, moving on to our over, under, and our lightning round. This is, of course, Shannon, welcome. This is where Carter refuses to answer the questions and is either tired or lazy, so gives his worst answers. So it's really a moment for you to shine. Is that fair, Carter? Is that a fair assessment?
It's not unfair.
Okay. Here. I'm not going to give you a list of questions because I actually want to throw something at you guys that's been gnawing at me, which is, should we be mocking the separatists? And here they are so, and I think there is like a seriousness to this question because they're so memeable. They look like characters, like at least from the presentation of what we've seen thus far. And there is a sense of like, we should be ensuring that these folks get no air whatsoever. There's a ridiculousness to this. There's a mocking. There's just almost a desire to mock. That all being said, we have seen that when you mock groups like this, they actually come out even stronger. You're actually building them, giving more airtime. So it's in the heart of it, it's an acute sort of like, what should we be doing with our hands, anchorman question. But there's also a strategy element to it. Like, how would you take this group that is so memeable, that is so able to go viral to show their ridiculousness? Carter, would you lean into that? Or are you saying stay away from that? You're actually playing, to use a term we've used a few times on today's pod, are we playing with fire? I'll let you go first.
I think we're playing with fire. I think that you don't mock the mockable sometimes when things get serious. I think that's one of the inclinations of the Brexit idea, right? It was to mock it, and this is deathly serious. So I think you'd be deathly serious. This is also part of the reason why I want to fight on a different question to start with. It keeps us out of their field and keeps us out of making fun of them or minimizing them. We don't want to amplify them by accident. What we want to do is we want to generate a team of people as fast as possible. And those two things are kind of, they come around your mocking question. Do you really want to mock these people when you could accidentally supply them with a lot more juice? I mean, we mock the anti-vaxxers.
We did.
Or we mock,
or some of us did. Like culturally, we did. I'll just say that mainstream
500
culturally.
of them have measles right now. But it's not it's not a strong play to mock. The strong play is to get ready.
Shannon, what do you think?
Well, it depends on who we is, because there's a whole bunch of different folks out there on the landscape, communicating various messages, right? And some of these, people who are online influencers have a far larger breadth and depth of audience than we will ever have, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so I think leave them to it. But serious people should say serious things. Condescension and sarcasm never translates. When you, a lot of the rules of political communication have changed over the last 25 years that I've been in this business, but that one hasn't. Serious people should remain serious. The last thing you need is for serious people to become the meme themselves. So let people who are already in that world, let them do it. They're going to do it. Right. There's going to be enough, folks out there who are going to be like, look at this guy. Right.
Right.
Let them go. Right. You don't need to participate in that. You are not that. Right. Political communicators are something different. And if we want our institutions to work, and not to get too high minded about it, but if we want, this all of this rules based order of, political institutions and democracy to work, then we have to take ourselves seriously. And so I would say that keep it serious because it is. Stay out of the meme wars. Don't become that Brantford boomer or whatever that thing was that the Conservatives were riding the horse of in the federal campaign. And other people will do the work for you on that.
We're going to leave it there. That's a wrap on episode 1870 of The Strategist. My name is Zane Velju. With me, as always, Shannon Phillips, Stephen Carter, and we shall see you next time.